call this March 2nd Board of Education work session meeting to order. March 1st, I'm sorry, March 2nd. Oh, it says March 2nd. Sorry, March 1st. Work session meeting to order. George, can you take the roll?
Sure. Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Salee?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Present.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum?
Here. If we could all stand for the pledge. All right, at this time we always state our district goals, and they are academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. George, do we have any public comment? Great, all right, thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Cameron.
Thank you, Laura. Before we go into the treasurer's report, we did want to skip ahead a little bit. We've got two exciting appointments or recommendations for staffing positions for the board to consider. And so our two colleagues don't have to sit here for a while. We thought we'd go for this. I'm going to turn over to Jenny, who is going to share these two new positions and recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Riva. So just thrilled to announce two positions for your consideration this evening under Human Resources. So the first one is a recommendation for Amy Sweeney. This is from elementary principal to supervisor of elementary curriculum. And this is a new position for us. And I just want to say a little bit about Amy and her background. So Amy did graduate actually from Strongsville High School, and prior to that, she worked at the Educational Service Center, where she worked with different districts to help drive instruction and to make sure that, toward a goal of student achievement and best practices, working with the various teachers. So she definitely has a strong background in curriculum. And so this new position as supervisor of elementary curriculum is designed to further support our elementary level pre-K through 5. And Amy's area of focus will be including assisting and facilitating and advancing instructional programming. She's going to work with our TBT coaches, our instructional leaders, our principals, to ensure that we have alignment across all of the elementary buildings. Not only horizontally, but also vertically throughout the levels, throughout the grade levels. She's also going to help with our elementary literacy coaches. She's going to help with our Title I teachers, our EL teachers, and just again, and gifted, let's not forget them, and facilitate professional development towards enhanced best practices that are going to serve all students, and also interventions as well. So we're going to keep her pretty busy. She's going to work closely with Erin, our director of curriculum, and with our elementary principals. So we want to congratulate Amy, and I think she wants to come to the podium and just say a few words.
Thank you, Jenny. Good evening. First of all, thank you for your consideration for the position of Supervisor of Elementary Education or Curriculum. I want to thank Dr. Ryba and Mrs. Pelko and Mrs. Green for their recommendation and the trust that you're putting in me to help support our already strong curriculum department. My passion is always helping kids learn and grow academically and emotionally. And since being at Chapman, that's kind of developed into helping ignite a passion for teachers to help our kids learn and grow. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to spread that into our whole district and be able to ignite that passion of our elementary teachers and preschool teachers to help our kids learn and grow as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And like Amy said, Amy has served as our Chapman principal since 2018, and so we'll begin a search for her position. But again, thank you for everything you've done at Chapman, and we're excited to have you in this new capacity. The next position for your consideration is Jessica Frenchick. She is currently a teacher at Strongsville High School, and we are going to recommend that she becomes an instructional integration specialist. So Jessica is also a graduate of Strongsville High School and was hired in our district in 2007. In addition to being the advisor for DECA, she's taught a multitude of classes at the high school, and most recently is teaching AP Computer Science, which she's kind of had to learn as she goes with her students, which is wonderful. She's been a teacher-based team coach, a technology coach. She's the division chairperson for the Career Tech and Business Department. And over this past year, with everything going on with the pandemic, she has created her own site that she has shared with our district with every resource, every PD, everything in just one spot, which is just a great resource for all of our teachers. And so in this new position as Instructional Integration Specialist, Jessica is going to be providing ongoing support and training for pre-K through 12 teachers. She's going to help facilitate professional development for implementation of our Model Mustang competencies from portrait to practice. In addition, she is going to provide lots of resources for our teachers. She already has, but she's going to continue to do that, and promote innovation throughout our district through technology, through our project-based learning cohorts, continue to help and supervise and help them integrate those projects into classrooms. And then she's going to be working closely with me and helping our district leadership team guide our building leadership teams, and then of course our TBT, teacher-based teams, where all the action happens for great lessons and strategies that are put into place in the classroom. She's going to work also closely with the technology department with Dave and with curriculum with Aaron in regards to technology and PBL efforts. So we're thrilled to have Jessica on board as well, and I'll invite her to the podium to say a few words.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's weird to be here not surrounded by my students celebrating their success tonight. So I'm so excited about this opportunity and to meet the goals of our district and to help us move forward with not only technology, but through makerspace integration, pre-K through 12, working with our teachers to provide them the support needed for project-based learning to provide a positive experience for all of our students. So I'm so excited, and I can't wait to get started working on all of these great things for our district. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Jessica. Very excited to have you recommended this evening, too. So both of these positions will be recommended under my section for Human Resources.
So I just want to share, first of all, thrilled to have, two graduates from the district, but more importantly, two outstanding colleagues in the district with this opportunity. As we've shared or talked about the possibility of these new positions, and whether you want to use the phrase, how do we move from good to great, or for us, how do we move from really good to premier? We need support. We need guidance. We need some, whether it's instructional integration, whether it's elementary curriculum, administrative focus. This is going to give the strategic focus necessary to help move us forward to the next level, and I think we've got two perfect people to do that. So it's been exciting for me in my role to see Amy come in 3 years ago and the leader she was and the leader she's grown into and will become in a new curricular role, and Jessica for what she's done to build a phenomenal DECA program. Before I really knew Jessica all that well, to now that it will be sustained and whatever she puts her mind to. We were having a conversation the other day, and I said, the great thing about these recommendations for me is I know they're new positions, right? And we've got clear guidance and we've got clear focus of what these positions will be. But I said, I know I can give both of these ladies very little direction, and they're going to go and do a phenomenal job. And she clearly said to me, yes, I don't need much direction, just let me do my thing. She both will do a phenomenal job. So I appreciate the board's leadership and foresight to see where we want to go as a district and some of the support that's needed as you consider this coming up in the agenda.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
If I may, I just want to take the opportunity to add my congratulations to both Amy and Jessica. What I think is exciting for the board is the fact that both of you have been leaders in your in your existing domains. Jessica at the high school, Amy at Chapman. But the work you've done far outpaces what you're doing in those areas. And I think as a board, we're very excited that you now have the ability to impact the entire district. You know, before you were impacting the students at Chapman or the students at the high school, but the roles that you're going to be entering in next year will impact each and every student in the district. And that should be exciting for everyone. It's also an awesome responsibility, but I know both of you are ready for that, and we look forward to seeing the work in the years to come. So congratulations, and we're proud of you.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to George for Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Mrs. Hausum. So for my treasurer's report tonight, we have a discussion item, and it's a continuation regarding our strategic planning from our board retreat regarding records digitization, and to kind of present what the problem is now, or our current state, where we want to go, and board direction as to which direction do we go to. So regarding our records, we have board policies that govern our records. The board policies, I have them listed: 8310 public records. The Board of Education is responsible for maintaining the public records of this district. The district's records shall be organized and maintained so that they are readily available. Board Policy 8320, personnel files. The Board of Education requires that accurate, necessary, and relevant records exist concerning an employee's qualifications for the job held. Such records will be kept in compliance with the laws of the state of Ohio. And Board Policy 8330, student records. In order to provide appropriate educational services and programming, the Board of Education must collect, retain, and use information about individual students. Simultaneously, the board recognizes the need to safeguard students' privacy and restrict access to students' personal identifiable information. The board is responsible for the records of all students who have attend or have attended schools in this district. So addressing the problem, or this current situation, is our records are paper and we're running out of space. Per board policy and Ohio law, an important task of the Board of Education is maintaining accurate student and personnel records and being a custodian over those records. Records should be maintained in good condition and easily accessible for use by district personnel to review or transmit to current and past students, parents, and other agencies as deemed appropriate. And students need timely access to transcripts for colleges, scholarship opportunities, employment, other purposes. Records are often used internally and externally to review IEPs, due process meetings, arbitration, court proceedings, and other purposes. Our current system of record keeping is obsolete, inefficient, and the district is running out of space to maintain the physical records. Records are vulnerable to damage caused by outside circumstances, and records in the paper system are also prone to misplacement caused by filing records improperly. We also have various duplication of records and files that are kept based on the buildings and departments, such as student services, human resources, payroll, and benefits. If the records were digitized, users would have access to the same record rather than each building and department maintaining its own copy of the same record. And the current system requires use of district resources, such as employee time for locating and copying documents, and district space that's taken up for storage rooms, file cabinets that could be used for offices. So we have the records on various platforms. Mainly the paper records are taking up the most space, but our student records are stored on various media platforms based on previous archives. We have microfiche, which is for years up to graduation year 1996. Currently, our microfiche machine does not print, and printing is done through a microfiche camera connected to a computer utilizing outdated software. From graduation years 1997 through 2014, we've had various archives, which they were put on various different CDs depending on when the archive was done, and that CD contains, each CD contains large PDF files that aren't broken down by students. It's just one file that need to be searched for the entire file for a particular student or a particular record that we're looking for. And if a student's graduation year is not provided, an extensive search is needed to locate the file, where it could go through various paper records, various CDs, or the microfiche to find that particular record. And then currently in the paper format, we have our special education files, and then student records for graduation years to 2015 to current, which is awaiting another archiving decision. Current student records in the paper format with the files being kept at the school building. So current student records are in a paper format with the files being kept at the school building, and the files follow the student as the student progresses through the elementary, middle, and high school. And then special education records are kept here in the administration building, which is known as the A file, and then a duplicate file of that same record is kept at the school building, which is known as the B file. So there's duplication of the special ed record there, which our special ed records are, a file could be significant to a ream of paper or more. Our personnel records are stored on a paper format. Personnel files are kept in the Human Resources Department, and then as well in Treasurer's Office for payroll and benefits. This again creates additional duplication of records, as the same record is stored in two different places in two different files. Student and personnel records are permanent records, and if any of these records were damaged, lost, and cannot be reproduced, a requester can file for statutory damages up to a maximum of $1,000 per record. I think this problem's trying to be addressed down the road, but it's always been kind of kicked down the road historically due to either the magnitude of the problem or the cost avoidance for a comprehensive solution. So kind of giving you an idea of what our current situation looks like, I was able to take some pictures to kind of show how we're running out of room. So first, this is our pupil services department. These are our special education records of the district. So they're housed in these 4 filing cabinets that you see on the screen, which are out of space. So the overflow is the furnace behind it against the wall, which is containing the overflow, and it's continued to stack. And there's another set of filing cabinets here that are also out of room as well. This file cabinet includes our microfiche data. This is our microfiche reader. In the middle between them is additional overflow of special ed records. And the microfiche reader does not print, so in order to print the documents, we need to utilize this camera, which is connected to this computer, that is using software that's outdated and is running off of Windows 7. And then additional records that are waiting to be archived. These are examples of 2018 and 2019 graduation years that are in boxes awaiting a decision on which way to go. And then another set of file cabinets for student files that we must permanently maintain for students who have transferred out of the district. This is an example of our storage room for financial and business service records. Some of these records would not be scanned as they're not permanent. The ones with the yellow label are not permanent. They could be removed once the retention schedule expires. The files with the pink label are permanent. So those would need to be scanned if we decide to move that direction. The idea is to also move forward being digital, so we wouldn't have to keep filing these records that are not permanent. So the solution that I'm proposing, as well as members of the administration team, is to provide a system and service to be purchased that would digitalize the historical records into a records management software. And that software is SEView. Currently, we have purchased SVU during the 2021 fiscal year, and the build of the system is in process. But in the current state, the system will only be utilized for new records moving forward. It would not address the old records that you have saw in those pictures. And the current issue is a board decision is needed for the purchase of the service to digitize the current paper records into the new system if we decide to go that direction. The benefits of digitizing those old records are the files can be found and distributed in minutes and not days. A complete HIPAA and FERPA compliant audit trail. And what that means is if anyone accesses those records, an audit trail will be created on who's viewed those records and where have they sent them to. So you know who's been looking at them, versus them being out in the open as they are now. Security against fire, flood, theft, and other disasters. For example, if a pipe bursted in here, if there was a fire and those records were damaged and that data cannot be reproduced, there is a $1,000 fine per record that cannot be reduced for statutory damages. Another benefit is contactless sharing of information to multiple locations and staff members. Again, once it's in the system, multiple users, the needed users can all access the same file. Easy to update and add notes to files without removing documents from the file system. Possibility to utilize workflow for requests or other activities, and such as the transcripts requests, which I'll touch on another slide. And then first call resolution when needing information from documents. And what that means is if a special education teacher or someone calls the special education clerk requesting the records, if they're in the system, they can get them that record within minutes rather than give me a couple of days to go find it, I'll scan it to you and get back to you, which may require a follow-up email. Hey, what's the status of this record that I've been looking for? So it's reducing requests for days into minutes. And then also, the last benefit is to reduce and eliminate space constraints, repurpose storage spaces. For example, that room that I showed with the financial records, that's the size of a classroom. It could be repurposed into something different. It could be an office. As mentioned, it could improve the transcript process, which I know there's been a little frustration in the past couple months. The current state, the transcript requests are requested via paper transcript request form. Those requests are received via mail or dropped off in person. A district clerk searches for the transcripts via one of the archived methods that I mentioned earlier, whether it's finding in the microfiche, the CD, or in one of the boxes for the paper copy. Then the request is mailed for an official copy, and the requester would receive the transcript in days depending on mail delivery. First the mail coming to the district, and then the outgoing mail going, and then depending on the number, how long it takes for the person to dig up the record. If the records were in SE View, the requests could be made from a form generated by SE View, which is then linked onto the website. The request is sent through a workflow through the SE View software to the district clerk. Then the software can electronically certify the transcript as an official copy. And nowadays, most colleges are now taking electronic copies as the official form. So it could eliminate the transcript from days to minutes or to a day, depending on when the clerk looked at the request. But it eliminates from searching for it to a few clicks by typing the person's name. And then just a little bit about SE View. It's currently used by 500 plus school districts in the state, and that's there's 600 public school districts, and then JVSs and career centers, it's another 100, so it's used by 500 out of 700 districts in the state. Offers solutions for all departments and document types that may encompass scanning, records management, workflow, and electronic forms. So as I touched on, for the student records and personnel, we could also, once we have the platform, we could use it for other needs as well. The company has a significant understanding and experience with Ohio Revised Code and works closely with Ohio's Historical Society. As mentioned, instant access to records. Will have unlimited storage on their platform, disaster recovery, electronic forms and workflow, and just some of the surrounding districts that are using the same platform and have their records digitized by the company are Berea, Brunswick, North Royalton, Olmsted Falls, Westlake, and there's others as well. So what's this cost us? The cost just for scanning the paper records, only the special education files that I showed you in the pictures, and the personnel files for human resources and payroll and benefits, It's $120,000 for those paper records. Also, they could scan the microfiche. The microfiche films that we have, they can be added to their system, and that is $43,000. And then the annual license fee is about $6,990. At the retreat, Richard had asked me to do a cost-benefit analysis to see if there's a payback. So I did complete a cost-benefit analysis, and the details, I sent you the presentation, and the details are linked, but the payback, I think, would be about 3.3 years, and the breakdown for that is, one is mentioned the space that we're taking up. So the cost of the space, although it's our own space, but I was able to obtain from the city what the cost per square foot for renting office space is now, the going rate, and it's $13.43. The storage room is 1,000 square feet, and then also looking at the file folder, or the cabinets where we have records, that's another 1,000 square feet. So $13.43 a square foot times 2,000 square feet, the $26,860 there that we're essentially using district space. Employee time, I asked the two district clerks what their average time is obtaining these records, finding based on the number of requests that they get a week. That's about $7,000. The estimated cost for printing of the records is about $7,500. Annualizing the shredding estimate for disposing of records is about $3,000. And then based on our last archive of just putting things on a CD, which was last done in 2015, was about $5,000. So total annual cost, I would say, is $49,000 divided by the $120,000 and $43,000, which total $163. Divide the 49 into that is 3.3 year payback. My recommendation is to purchase a service to digitize the historical records to improve the efficiency of the district and also the safeguarding of the records. And then lastly, I just wanted to be clear that this cost is just for the special ed records that I showed, and the pictures that are here in this building, the personnel files, and the microfiche. We do have other records at the school buildings, which are the current year students, the regular ed students' files. We call them the ACUM files. Those are not part of the cost. What their recommendation was, let's move forward, let's phase into it, begin with this phase, building the foundation, allowing our employees access to the system, getting familiar with the system, and then once we're familiar with the system within a half a year to a year, begin phasing in those other records. And they could train our employees at the buildings to scan those records themselves rather than having the company do that. And those records are not as significant as the special ed files. Those special ed files, a file could be over 500 pages. A regular ed student file is not that large. So we could phase it in. If a building would take a grade level, maybe a month or 2 months or whatever that is, and especially at the elementary, per building, a grade level is somewhere between 100 to 150 kids, depending on the size of the building. So it's much more manageable at the building level than it is with our historical data. And then lastly, although I mentioned the cost for this, it's $163,000 where we can find funding from. I did verify with the state. The ESSER funds is not an allowable use for these funds, so it would need to come from the general fund. So based off my January financial report, the current year budget is trending 1.3 under budget. Revenues were trending 800,000 over. So as of January, projecting 2.2 million into the general fund, using a small portion of that to invest back in the district, just to improve. Otherwise, we just, I don't know, we just keep with the same outdated method. At some point, it's an expense that we have to bite. So I'll turn it over to the board for any further discussion or questions.
George, what happens to the records that are being stored right now if we can move forward with this?
What happens to them?
Yeah.
So if we move forward to this, So they would take them, and then they would archive them. They would put them in their, well, they would put them in their system. They would go into SCView, they would build a system for us, and then once they're scanned and in there, then they would destroy them as part of that cost as well.
George, do you have a sense of what the phase 2 cost would be in terms of training our employees to scan the rest of the documents?
So the only cost that we provide, if we ask them to scan the records, and what he's estimated, he hasn't seen them, so he was kind of giving me a ballpark estimate based on other districts. If they would scan them, it could be anywhere between 10 to 20,000.
That's if this company scans them?
Those other records, yeah.
Okay. And then if we do it ourselves, it's minimal?
It'd be minimal. We would have to purchase, I think we're gonna have to do it anyways, some desktop scanners at a higher level and have the employees do it. If there's any cost, it would depend on if they do it through the day or if they do work overtime to do it.
Okay. And I have one more question. You said 500 of the approximately 700 districts in the state use this.
Yeah.
Do they all use it in the same way you're suggesting? So I know we were going to move forward with it going, anyway. Are they also all using it for previous records?
I don't know about all 500, but the ones I know of, they're using it for previous records. I was actually talking to Mike Robinson and Polaris.
Yeah.
So they have it, they're just using it moving forward. They still have, he said they have 2 storage rooms full of previous year's records.
Okay.
I just talked to North Royalton today. They have their historical records on there as well. And most districts have their, I would say most have their historical. I can't go one by one
Sure.
to know for sure, but I would say most of the treasurers that I've talked to, it's been their historical, especially putting their microfiche on it. One other district that came up in discussion today was Westlake. They put all their historical records on it as well. Brunswick put it on about 10 years ago. They're one that has their historical records as well.
Thank you. That helps.
George, for the moving forward, I understand having to scan all the past paper documents, everything. Moving forward, is there a way that instead of having to scan the documents, that they all can be digitized to begin with? So if a form has to be filled out, it's automatically kind of put into the system instead of having to do a paper and then scan, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's the idea, to get most records in its original format as digital.
Okay.
This system can create forms, but there are also going to be some records that we could receive that aren't going to be digital, that they would still need to be scanned in.
Okay.
But the idea is to get as much digital in this original form. And then I think it's also going to be a phase-in. It's that component is like a behavioral change. So you're going to have to change someone's behavior, which it takes time.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Yep.
George, as far as the, in the initial quote, you have the scanning of paper records, pupil services, and personnel, and then you have microfiche and previous archives. Are there any documents that we're choosing not to include other than the ones that are at the individual schools?
So these are the permanent records that are quoted. Ones that we chose not to include, I'll give you an example, are some of my financial records. Like we have to keep checks for 10 years. Those are going to drop off the schedule. There's a retention period for those after 10 years. So those I wasn't recommending to scan because once they drop off the schedule, we'll just delete them and then start moving forward, starting with a year and move forward as digitizing them. The idea is starting next year to begin digitizing our purchase orders and checks. That way they're in e-finance versus keeping a paper record. So those types of records that are dropping off the retention schedule, I chose not to scan.
What is the longest period besides permanent records? What is the longest period on our retention schedule? Is 10 years the longest?
I would have to get back and I'd have to check. I don't have it with me. I think,
Okay.
but there might be some offhand that could be 20 to 50, but the most common ones are 10 years. The other ones as well that I didn't chose that are permanent are the minutes. We have the minutes in books. For now, we can keep those books, and then moving forward, we can use this system to put the minutes, to archive the new minutes moving forward. Those books aren't taking as much space as the other records, and if we ever decide to archive those, we can do that down the road.
And then the plan for the plan as you're presenting it, this is the only uplift as far as getting a body of documents into online storage. If I understand you correctly, is that what you're saying? The rest of the documents we would do more organically and internally?
Can you repeat your question? I just want to make sure I understood it correctly.
So we discussed the other records at the schools, et cetera. Is it your plan that this initial quote is the only uplift that we're going to require to use as an outside service?
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully no other records come up that we didn't look at, but those are the big ones, is the student services and the personnel that are causing us the most issues right now.
And so you ballparked $20,000 to do the other records at the individual schools, et cetera. So your plan is for us to tackle that internally as we grow with the system?
Yeah, that's our plan, and that was also the recommendation from the company that has SVU, which is called Strategic Solutions, is to kind of use that as a training tool, to use that process as a training tool for our employees to get them ready to use the system. Because once we're full go on it, when new records come in, they're going to have to create those records, put those records into the system and maintain it. So by having them scan the current records that are at their buildings would provide a training method to prepare them for when they're to handle the new requests as they come in.
And have we already purchased the hardware for that? Or do we already own the hardware for that? Or is that going to be another
The software.
ask?
So we own the software. The hardware, it could cost, I haven't gotten a quote on that. We could, depending on what it is, our scanners could scan that we have now based on our printers. We could utilize that depending on how it flows in to the system, or we can look at what their scanners would be. But I'm not seeing those scanners to be a significant price.
Then the only other question I have is, this is software as a service, and we're having them host it, correct?
Correct.
So have we discussed what happens if we decide to separate?
I can get additional details.
Okay, because I mean, ultimately, the issue that becomes with all of the software as a service is they have the records, and if you try to separate and you haven't thought through it ahead of time, you suddenly are stuck.
Right.
And I'd also want to know what their security posture is. If it's their servers, from a user standpoint, there's a benefit. But if they get infected with malware or what have you, and ultimately lose our records, what is our follow-up on how we, do we have an on-site backup that they can provide separate from the system? Those kind of security issues, and I'm sure David can help us ask the right questions to make sure we have a 360-degree security posture.
Okay.
But it doesn't take long to Google cases where school districts and cities have been infected with malware and end up having to pay the ransom because they don't have effective backups and they don't have any other way to get the records back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll dig into those questions, and I'll talk to you offline too to get additional information for those records, or for those questions.
Okay.
So when we, what Rich was talking about in terms of, having backup, I haven't looked up any systems, school systems, but you would think there would be something separate from, I guess I don't understand that. You think there would be a separate storage space where we would be able to treat those? Is that?
Yeah, they do have a disaster recovery plan. I just don't know the specifics to speak to it to answer Richard's question.
Oh, okay. Well, I like the cost. I was surprised at the payback period because I didn't realize the cost of the benefit analysis. I guess the savings that we would get from purchasing the system would be so extensive, $49,000 per year. And with that payback of 3.3 years, that's just to cover our initial cost of $163,000.
Mm-hmm.
That savings is extended for years and years after that. So the $50,000 that we save is even after that 3 years. Those are savings that we will incur for, I'll say a lifetime, but, because we eliminate all these costs here.
Right.
So, also the destruction of our records, that's just a push of a button now. Is that scheduled in the system? Is that how that will work?
Yeah, so for records that would come off.
The retention schedule?
The retention schedule, yeah. They could be deleted based on the index type. So the records will be indexed. So depending on the index, it could be deleted off that way when the expiration for those records would expire.
Okay.
What's their timeframe to have the people services, personnel files all done?
So what he told me is that they could pick them up by the end of this month. If we were to approve it, whatever month we would approve them, give them 30 days to pick it up, and then potentially to midsummer to get them all scanned.
Okay.
But it'll all depending on when we move on it.
And with the duplicate files at the buildings, is there any chance that there's something that's at the building that isn't in the record here?
Hopefully not, but
Okay.
you never know.
Well, I guess that's my question.
That's another risk by
How do we-
having them.
Okay.
How will we know that? Like even if someone requested records, would you ever,
I don't know.
like if something's missing from, I guess you would, if someone requested, say, elementary school, or something, information out the elementary file from Sarar,
Right.
and you, it's not here, then you would come over here and say, well, is it here? It's not there either.
Well, it all depends with what type of file it is. So the ones that are duplicate, the A file and the B file, are the special education files. The student, like for example, my kids' files, they're regular ed. Their files are being kept at their home building. And then they would move. So my daughter's in 5th grade now at Kinsner. Next year, her file would go to the middle school.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions?
Well, you're looking for a board decision?
Well, at least I'm looking for board consensus as to, do we bring this back for a vote, or?
I would like to make a motion to vote on it.
Is anyone opposed to George moving forward with this?
I'm not, but I do want the answers to the questions that Richard asked,
Right.
because I do think those are things that we need to carefully consider before we go all in.
Yeah.
But in terms of going all in, I think we need to do it somehow, just make sure all the ducks are in a row.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
So I'll get those, so the direction I'm hearing is, I'll get those answers, questions, get the contracts, and then we can put them on the upcoming agenda for a vote.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, George. Cameron?
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to start with our number 2 here, the discussion item for our Right at School after school program. So George, if you could switch the projector to go back to the source search make sure it works before we. There we go. So I'd like to introduce Dawn and Amanda from Right at School. As I've shared with the board, we started this discussion about a year ago with one of their colleagues, a superintendent colleague of mine, brought Right at School in. Right at School, they're a lot more, and I'm not going to steal their thunder, but they provide before and after school services. And that's something, in our district, Muraski Elementary School was the only building of all 5 elementary schools that offered any sort of service. And so Aaron would know this. Every time we would have a kindergarten orientation meeting, the most popular question was, do you have before or after school care? We'd say, yes, we do at one building. And they'd say, why? And we didn't have a great answer. So after talking with one of their colleagues, Adam, we brought it to our central office administrative team, really liked the services that they would be able to provide. COVID hit, we took a little pause. We had them meet with all of our elementary principals about a month ago. And all of our elementary principals were very impressed with the services that they could offer our families in Strongsville. So I'd like to turn it over now to Dawn and Amanda to kind of share a little bit more about what Right at School is. Give the board a chance to be a part of these discussions, ask any questions that you may have, and then kind of long-term vision. If we're all supportive of bringing Right at School, there is a contract that we would enter into for next school year, and that would be on the March 18th board agenda for your consideration. So tonight is just learning more about them and answering any questions you may have. So Dawn?
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having us. My name is Dr. Dawn Bridges, and I am the Senior Director of Education and School Partnerships for Right at School. That really kind of equates to I'm the educational expert. So I have 25 years in public education, and I always like to say I've come to the light side of life and get to really make a change across the country and doing a lot of things and having conversations with superintendents around what change really needs to happen in order to best meet the needs of students over time. With me is my fearless colleague, Ms. Amanda Frawley, and she's the area manager for Right at School. And I'll let Amanda speak in a minute, but basically she's the queen bee right here in Ohio who really kind of oversees all the different programs here. So she's the boots on the grounds girl. I'm the one that gets to fly from Chicago here, there, and everywhere. Looking forward to that now. This is my first trip from a year ago. So it's been kind of exciting here. Let's see if I can get this to go. Okay. So with that, a lot of the conversations that I have is really around when you think about students, they are awake 5,000 hours in a year. And in those 5,000 hours of waking time, they're in school 1,000 of those hours. And so we like to say, what's going on the other 4,000 hours, right? So really, ultimately, we want to say there's a lot of time that happens after school that we just want to be able to capitalize on that and really want to say, like, what can we be doing to really work to meet the needs of students? And so a lot of my work is around research and really looking to say, what does that look like? And when I talk with superintendents, I say, when you think about your strategic planning, you're always focused on the 8 to 3 time. This is the time that you have control over. There's a lot of research out there now that really supports that we need to be looking at what is their ultimate experience from the minute they wake up and they get to preschool and even earlier, all the way to when they graduate and they go on, and those hours that are after school as well as beyond that. And so what is that educational experience that we want for kids to have? What are those outcomes? And so a lot of that time really needs to be focused on how can we maximize and capitalize this time that's happening after school and make it a little bit more productive. So a lot of the research out there really supports, actually, in essence, when you look at a kid's educational experience in the most impactful time, they're not talking about what happens in a 4th grade classroom or that kindergarten project that they did. Most of the time, it's things that are happening outside of the school day. It's those coaches, it's the experiences that they have that really kind of shape and form who they are and who they want to become. And so we know that there's a lot of support out there that says the more time that kids can spend in these kinds of programs that are of high quality, gaps will begin to close. And I think that Dr. Ryba's attempt in having conversations with us again during this time was actually quite timely.
we've really spent a lot of time during this pandemic thinking about what are those things that are going to make a difference and most impactful when kids come back to school. And while your kids, I know, are back in, they still have trauma. They're still experiencing things. And how do we work to close gaps? What are those services that a district can provide to help support kids close those gaps that are needed? And here's just a lot of the things that you see. And ultimately, you know, decreasing that achievement gap is a big thing. And I know that it's one of your board focuses that you have. But ultimately, when we think about better mindset, social emotional learning, et cetera, and we'll kind of get into that. So our CEO, an educator himself, was picking his own kids up and saying, I want more for these kids. These kids should not just be sitting and, you know, being in the gyms and running around with ultimate chaos. What can we be doing that's still fun, yet still more productive in giving parents that peace of mind that they deserve? So we really like to focus on the child. We're very student-centered, but we're also very outcome-focused. We want to make sure that every activity that we're doing from when they come in until when they leave has intentionality around it. Now, that's not to say that it's just going to be this skill and drill, because it isn't that. We're there to foster a love of learning. We want kids to come in and just be excited about spending time there and doing some fun things. We want to focus on how do we give back to the community? How do we show and model for kids grit and resilience, and yet giving back to the community itself? So we have a curriculum, and our curriculum is designed by educators, and we like to call it disguised learning. And the reason why, it's very inquiry-based. It follows, you know, the 4 C's, it really focuses a lot on inquiry, but ultimately in their STEM activities, it really is about having them have fun. How can we give them something and allow them opportunities to roll up their sleeves, get their hands wet and dirty, and have fun, all while, you know, participating in these types of things? All of our activities are, at this point, very COVID safe, so we've really gone through and restructured them to make sure that we're still within those guidelines, but they also follow state standards. So we make sure that we are following your state standards with activities that are in there, as well as we follow the CASEL framework for social emotional learning. I'm going to pause since I said a lot, and I'm going to turn it over to Amanda, who, because this is what she does, can speak specifically to kind of what that after-school schedule looks like. Now, I've had conversations with Dr. Ryba and his team and said, you know, this is kind of the traditional thing. We are not a cookie-cutter program. We want to do what works best for you here in Strongsville. So if we have this conversation and you guys are interested and, you know, the cabinet comes back and says, well, we would really feel like this is an important piece that we want part of it, we will make that happen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda, who can speak specifically to the daily schedule.
So I'm Amanda Frawley. I'm the area manager
Amanda,
at Wright School.
just
You want to
for-
speak to them?
Sorry. I have been with Wright at school for 3 years now. I started with Brunswick, and then over the last couple of years, we opened Revere Local and Buckeye Local. I also help open other districts, but I've worked very closely with my superintendents, my principals, some teachers. And this is all well and good, you know, so this is what your typical afternoon looks like: welcome attendance, town hall, your healthy snacks. So your town hall is basically, the kids come in, they drop their stuff off, they all gather together. Of course, right now we go wash our hands, we, you know, do all these different protocols, but then it's really just sitting down and, how was your weekend? You know, do you have anything fun planned? Did you have a good day? Did you have a bad day? You know, and just getting the conversation going. You know, getting the snack in, the right moves, that's like a 15-minute, you know, get the Wiggles out. They've been sitting all day, you know, that you just want to get up and just do something crazy. Or, you know, sometimes it's just, let's do some yoga. You know, we're going to get moving before we head into homework. And then the playwright fitness, so that's something more structured and planned. So we're talking, you know, 30, 45 minutes of, you know, sharks and minnows, or maybe we're going to do soccer or something. Like last year, one of our curriculum items was global games. So we incorporated our playwright fitness with global games. So they learned a game from Ethiopia. They learned a game from Ireland. They learned, you know, what kids do when they don't have PlayStations and, you know, all these different techie items to play with after school. And then Of course, we go into the triple play curriculum, so then they would take that, you know, say if they did something like that, go into and actually learn more about those games. So, you know, what was the root of those games? How did they get started, you know? And then free play, so by the time free play happens, you're thinking it's probably 5:30. You've got about a half hour. We've only got a few kids left. But we have, you know, we'll have an art station set up. We'll have a place where they can just go and quietly read. Or, you know, maybe they have a project that they're working on and they just want a little extra help with that, whatever that looks like for them. So this aside, I think the important thing that I've seen, and that is, for me, being a mom of 5, you know, they've all grown and gone, thank God. But what was important for me was that not only did my kids learn and have fun, but they were well adjusted and they were exposed to different things, right? So when I talk to my program managers, I like to encourage them to build those relationships in their schools. That yes, your kids are great, you know, to be and to participate with them. But if you really want to help your kids, partner with your school, partner with your teachers. You know, if you have a child that is struggling in math or their reading level is low, go to that teacher, you know, talk to that parent, get permission, and then partner. What do you know, you're with Joseph all day. What do? You know, can you give me some tips and tricks on how we can partner? You know, one of my schools right now, we have a child that he has some anger issues. So we've partnered with them to, you know, work on, you know, what they do during the day. You know, what do the parents do? The parents are actually educators. So you know, they deal with their kids in their classes all day. So they really understand and is partnering with them also so that every child succeeds. Right? So at the end of the day, it's really just making sure that whatever we're doing isn't separate from what you're doing. It's the same thing. We want to align what we're doing with what you're doing, right? So do you have any questions on that? No? All right. I'm a little nervous. Sorry.
Well, I think you made a great segue, Amanda. I want to kind of talk about that alignment, and I think that this is a great time to speak of that, because ultimately we don't want to be something that's separate. We want to make sure that whatever initiatives you have going on in your buildings are going on in our after-school programs, and so we want to be that extension. So when I talk about what ultimately that experience looks like, it's not something separate where kids are going, and although the great thing about this program is that they're going to be in your buildings, in each of your buildings, and so that's great. And so we want to make sure also that we're, you know, hiring, you know, paraprofessors and local educators who might be working in your buildings during the day and can then also then transfer into this in the afternoon. There's nothing better than knowing that there's just like this continuous flow that's happening, and so that this experience goes from 8 to 3 to now 7 to 6. And so whether you do PBIS or character counts or whatever your SEL program is in your district, we want to make sure that we're using down to the same vernacular, the vocabulary, the you know, strategies, et cetera, that you're doing. So again, you know, when Amanda talked about building those relationships with principals and the teachers, it's super important so that we are helping them and that we are building upon that success. We have a huge retention rate, and I know that's a big problem sometimes when we think about after-school programs, that people don't stay. They stay with us for 2 reasons. One, we build purpose. We get them excited and they feel that there's a sense of purpose for them to be these educators. We pay them well, usually 5 to 10% more, and we offer continuous improvement, you know, ongoing professional learning for them. We incentivize them by, you know, here's an extra thing you can do, and here's an extra piece of professional learning that you can participate in, and then therefore we will then increase your pay. And so that's where we can keep and inspire and people stay. We've been in business for over 10 years, and we have educators who've been with us that long. I always like to make sure that I talk about special needs, and I know Amanda touched on that a little bit. Very near and dear to my heart. I have a sister with Down syndrome, and I can just say, like, and I've encouraged this of Dr. Ryba, like, you know, reach out and talk to the other superintendents. That's the best way, or other parents who are participating in these programs, because I can sit here and tell you as an educator or as someone who has a sister with Down syndrome that, you know, this is amazing. I will tell you, I've seen it firsthand. A lot of these students thrive, more so than other students, because of the focus and the intentionality and the routine that we build within these programs. We have a master level therapist, a behavior therapist on our staff. Her job really is to brainstorm and work with Amanda and her educators in each of these programs, and, you know, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those students and that they can be successful in our programs. That's super exciting. You won't be able to see the small detail, and Dr. Ryba can share this, but ultimately, based upon the current pricing that you have, we will lower those prices. So it's a 3% reduction, and you can see one of the biggest things that stands out for us versus current programming is we want that flexibility. We believe that you only should pay for what you're getting. So if you're a parent that only needs to work 2 days a week or have their child be in that program, then wow, you're going to save an awful lot of money, right? Because in the program that you currently would have to send them to, you'd have to pay what that rate is. So we are giving 1 to 5 day flexibility. We allow that to change monthly. We also understand whether you're an essential worker or first responder, that something might happen and you need to make adjustments. Amanda's here also to make sure that that happens and that, you know, you get what you need. We also offer a 10-day punch card, which is amazing. So even if you are a parent that doesn't need consistent care, you can register your kid, you get a 10-day punch card, because let me tell you, really what builds this program, and it continues to build year over year, at least 10 to 20%, and at least Amanda was telling me in one of her buildings it was like way higher, 50% higher in a year. It's the excitement from the kids. They come home and they're like, why didn't I get to go and participate in that? And so here's another great opportunity for your kid to get enrichment or extra learning and to come in with a 10-day punch card and take advantage of that. We just ask for 24 hours notice. I'm going to stop and kind of, Dr. Ryba, is there something that I didn't address? I will say one other thing before I ask you the question. You can think about that. Is AASA is the National Superintendents Association. They have endorsed us as the before and after school provider nationally because of the deep work that we've done in social emotional learning. I sit on their thought leadership specifically for the SEL cohort, and we're really looking to do wide systemic work in SEL and continually are reboosting and finding ways to provide even more enriching programming in SEL because we know that of its importance. So with that, is there something I didn't address that I should have?
No, I think you did a great job, and really, you know, what we're looking to do as a school district is provide a service for our families. Is to go out and take a look and say, hey, for our school district, who do we feel would be a great before and after school provider? There are other things. There's summer camp opportunities that we didn't get into tonight, but there's opportunities for summer care. There's opportunities, obviously, for the before and after school care. But providing this service to our families in every building would be something that I would encourage that we would like to do and expand from where we're at now. But I think both Dawn and Amanda did a nice job covering the high points, and turn it over to the board for any specific questions you may have.
What is the adult-student ratio typically?
So it's very state by state. Legally in Ohio, it is.
Legally, it's 1 in 18. Typically, we do 1 in 15.
And do we, maybe this is more directed to you, Cameron, do we have capacity? What's the capacity for the program or per building or?
Right, so when we met with all of the principals, you know, as they've shared, a lot of times it's in the multi-purpose room or a gymnasium, but they're very flexible if they need to go to a classroom due to different events. But all of the principals shared that they have the capacity and the space to be able to house an after-school or before-school program. So if you take a look at the gymnasium or the the space, I don't think would be such an issue. Dawn, you can speak specifically
Sure, I
about
think
that.
a lot of it too is, so when you go into an elementary building, oftentimes there's basketball in the gym, right? Or there's some type of something that's happening. And so we're very flexible and nimble. We don't require a whole lot of space, and we're willing to be flexible. So we will go in with a whole team of people that comes into licensed spaces within the buildings, and we'll do multiple ones so that we know that if it even means, I was in a school in Chicago pre-COVID, and literally Monday it was like, we're here, and Tuesdays we're here, but next week on Mondays we're gonna be here. Like, if that's what we need to do in order to make it happen, we will. We really do not like to do wait lists, so as long as we can find space, and we're pretty creative in finding that space, we will continue to allow people to continue to join. And I think one of the things, I just wanted to add one more thing. I was just talking with Bill Daggett, who is a researcher around successful schools, and he talked about in 2025, he's really hoping that school turns out to be called learning hubs, that the name around school becomes learning hubs. And it made me think, I've used that term a lot because I do think that this should become an after-school community hub where kids can come in and they can participate, and this is what they do here, but yet they can also do Lego Club or Young Rembrandts. And as I shared with Dr. Ryba, when you bring in those other enrichment things, maybe it's tutoring because that's important, we will facilitate all of that for you so that kids get exposure to lots of different things. Mm-hmm.
Rich, you're muted.
That's better. You mentioned, I have a couple of questions. One, you mentioned there was a learning framework that you follow, but I didn't hear the name of it.
Sure, it's CASEL. CASEL is the learning framework for social emotional learning.
CASEL, like a...
C-A-S-E-L. C-A-S-E-L.
C-A-S-E-L, thank you. And then you mentioned that you typically pay 5 to 10% more than, I'm curious, 5 to 10% more than what? Your competitors?
Competitors, yes, correct.
Okay.
And you know, one of the things we look to do when we do look to hire like your paraprofessionals, say, oftentimes school districts, only like to, have them work 30 hours because anything above 30 hours would then require benefits, et cetera. Well, if you give them the 30 hours and they want more hours, we can give them those extra hours and then they become more of a full-time. So it usually does turn out to be win-win.
And what requirements do you have for your educators?
So they have to go through extensive training with us. So before they even set foot on campus, there is training that they do in person as well as modules that focus on developmental, they focus on safety protocols, et cetera, et cetera. Then we bring them in, we do training within the district in each particular district or each school that they're doing so that they know what the protocols of that particular school are. So we want to make sure even for students that, here's the procedure to go for, a fire drill or whatever, in this particular space, let's just say it's not going to be different after school than it is during the school. So all of that, we will train them within of what that is here. We will also pay for our educators to participate in any curriculum development or anything so that they become, like if you have a special math initiative, we will make sure that, we bring them in so that they feel comfortable when they're doing homework help, et cetera, that we can provide them with the tools necessary to be successful with students.
But, do they need a bachelor's degree, a teacher's license? What is your minimum qualifications?
So if I could answer this
Sure,
quickly.
please.
So we have educators and we have program managers. Our program managers, actually, I have the lowest education of my program manager. She has an associate's in early childhood education. I also have 2 program managers that have masters in similar things. So in order to be a program manager, you actually have to have gone to university or college and have a certain amount of hours in early childhood education. My actual educators, so they, teachers' assistants, they need to have their grade 12.
Thank you.
What's the cost to the district?
Zero.
And the contract's year to year?
It's an ongoing rolling contract, but yes, it can be, you know, and I will say, in 10 years, we've had no districts who have canceled. We just continue to grow. And we work really hard in ensuring that we find districts that we can have sustainability and continue to grow, because that's our mission.
Karen, what happens to the YMCA program at Maraski?
Yeah, so they're currently not they're not having that program this year, but that would just be, if the board agrees to go this direction, that would be an additional conversation we'd have with the YMCA. We notified them a few years ago, because of their summer camp structure, it's 5 days a week. So when we went to 4 days, 10-hour days in the summertime, we did that for their first year, and then the second year, they were looking for an alternative spot permanently. So that's a follow-up conversation that they would be officially notified that moving forward, we would not have a Y program in our district. We would be moving with Right at School. Any other questions from the board, or Dawn or Amanda, anything else you'd like to share?
No?
So thank you very much, Dawn.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, and thank you for rearranging your flights.
No worries.
Even it's exciting to fly, right?
I know,
Right,
yes,
so-
exactly. I mean, it's not Florida, but, you know.
Or Florida of the North, you know.
Yes,
it's,
the Florida of the North, exactly. Thank you for your time. And if
Thank-
anyone has any questions, I mean, you can
Sure.
send them through me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And so the one part I'd like clarity on, is the board okay to bring it back in March 18th for official consideration? Okay. Rich, can you nod your head, or, thank you. I did not catch that online. Thank you very much, and thank you for, appreciate it.
You can hand these out. There's just some handouts for your board.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The other discussion item that I had tonight was the responsible restart plan. Just real quickly to share great news. You know, Jenny shared with me it was the first Sunday in a long, long time.
First weekend.
First
All
weekend. All weekend, we did not have any positive COVID cases. So that's a great sign of the vaccine working, of, you know, the downward trend that we're seeing, people doing the right thing. So we're excited to see, as I put in my parent update today, the data dashboard is the best we've seen since the fall. Things are looking really well in the schools. They're looking well as we wrap up winter sports. We're starting spring sports, so we're still tracking all of our athletics, and things are looking good in terms of our data. Just a special mention, please, parents, I'll do a voice shout to remember, but just remember, take a look at the update I gave in terms of school this week. Monday through Wednesday is a normal day of school. Thursday is an asynchronous remote day for our students, as all of our staff will get their second dose of the vaccine. Friday is a professional development day for our staff, and it's a non-student day for students. So no remote, no in-person, it's a non-student day. That's a trade-off from March 15th. So that was the other reminder. March 15th is a traditional school day. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll put it in a future board update, but we talked about this a while ago. March 26th, I believe, was an early release day. There are no more early release days on the calendar. So I know if you're like some that write everything down right away or put it in your calendar, all the calendars are online or right. But after we get past March 15th, it's the normal calendar. We've got spring break and the last day of school, and that's it. The other thing, just wanted to give an update on the radar for our board and community. If you remember last year, because of the pandemic, the federal government allowed for waivers and we did not have state testing. President Biden recently said that he sent a letter to all school superintendents and basically said, we are having state testing. We need to see where the learning gaps are and the learning loss is. So we are going to have state testing. So everything that, we typically have in grades 3 through 8 with our Ohio State testing system, and all the same grade levels and subject areas. The end of course exams at the high school will happen, the AP exams, all of that stuff will happen. Now, the only thing that they've shared is that states may have the opportunity to request a waiver to extend the time frame to do these state tests. So we haven't heard yet whether Ohio is going to submit that. That's not a Strongsville thing, that's an Ohio thing. So if Ohio submits that waiver, we will get notice as to here's your time frame. Erin oversees all of that. She would work with our building administrator and staff to determine whether we're going to alter those time frames. So just please know we're getting into state testing season here in the coming weeks. And so as of right now, we're moving forward with the normal testing dates, and your building principals will be sharing all of those with you. So unless there's any specific questions, that's the update I wanted to give on where we're at with just general restart things. All right, with that, we'll move on to curriculum. A couple items for your consideration. First of all, we talked about advanced placement. So advanced placement program educational testing service, or Rotary Fund. Be resolved upon my recommendation that Strongsville City School District pays approximately $105,600 for advanced placement testing costs to be reimbursed by the participating students. So again, this is a Rotary Fund. We pay it up front. The kids pay what the test was, and it washes out to even at the end. The second thing is the Go Math Elementary Math work texts. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Strongsville City School District pays $51,257 to extend the current elementary math adoption, which was originally from 2015 to 21, which was approved by the board on April 23rd, 2015 for an additional year. So as I've shared in my communications with the board, based on the pandemic, the need to do a thorough review, the constraints because of the pandemic, Erin has recommended, and I support, that we extend our current math program by 1 year. Parents will know we don't buy textbooks anymore for a lot of our curriculum adoptions. We pay for workbooks or work texts for X amount of years that basically come close to what a textbook would be. So it's just adding on another year. And then Erin, next year, will start taking a comprehensive look at elementary K-5 math textbook adoptions. As we've shared, there's a new copyright for Go Math, but we'll look extensively to see if we want to stick with Go Math or go in a different direction.
Cameron, when does that end then?
So it would just end at the end of next school year. So we would have that for the 21-22 school year, and then we'd have to have something new ready for the 22-23 school year.
Thank you.
And then student teacher placement, be it resolved upon my recommendation that the student teacher be placed at Kinsner Elementary School, assigned to some of our third grade teachers, and the student is a student at Grand Canyon University. Any questions on curriculum? All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Jenny to come back and finish up the human resource report.
Thank you. Under Human Resources, this evening, a few items for your consideration. Under C1, we have the appointment of a non-certificated staff athletic supplemental contract for assistant girls track coach. And then, like I shared earlier, we have 2 recommendations for changes in status under C2. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the following administrative assignment be changed. So we have Amy Penny from elementary principal to supervisor of elementary curriculum. This would be a 2-year, 260-day contract, and the salary is commensurate with our administrative handbook. And then we have a change in status for certificated. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the following certificated assignment be changed. So Jessica Frenchick from teacher to instructional integration specialist. This is a 184-day contract, commensurate with the teaching contract. And then we've also included 5 extended days for her so that she can begin working in the summer with us to plan. And as well as the 6th class, we think it's important for her to continue to be in the classroom so she can try all these wonderful strategies and technologies that she's going to be sharing with teachers and kind of problem solve as she goes. And that concludes my report.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right. And that brings us to the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar. At this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda with an asterisk, which items that constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Anything need to be removed? Everybody's good? All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
George, can you do the roll?
Was it Michelle that did the second?
Yes.
Discussion?
Sorry, is there any discussion?
Do we need to change the date on the agenda? Does that matter? That's not you.
The agenda's formally changed. These were just printed prior to the date
Got
change,
it.
so we just didn't reprint them.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
No discussion?
So I just wanted to take an opportunity while we are discussing the consent calendar, the two positions that we're adding. When the board considers this, we use our goals as a guide. And so our goals are student achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. And so how are these positions going to affect that? So I think community engagement, we can look to the work Jessica's going to do with the makerspaces, especially in the first year. And part of those makerspaces does have a community role to push the education out amongst our families. In addition, the work she's going to do with the Model Mustang and getting that message out to the greater community. That's how we're going to do that community engagement. One of the things we have to look at, we consider this an investment, but investment is a fancy word for spending money. So under the guidelines of financial prudence, we're going to look to George to say, is our 5-year budget going to be able to handle this cost? So I'm going to turn it over to George. George, can we afford this?
Yeah, I mean, the current 5-year forecast I presented in November, we began deficit spending in 2025, but our cash balance at that point is also 50 million. So we've established throughout the years increased our cash balance, and when we did the renewal levy, we said we would, if the residents would pass the renewal levy, that it would at least get us through 2025, which it still would get us to 2025 and beyond. So we've been able to extend it, and this is these two positions are not going to take away from that.
So in a way, it's within our budget. It is something that we can't afford, and we're not going to wait until 2025 to continue to work on savings. So these two positions, we still honor our financial prudence. So the last one I wanted to discuss was student achievement. And, the taxpayer should be able to ask, what does he or she expect to gain from these positions? And in a simple way, we're going to have smarter students. And that should benefit our taxpayers as they graduate from our district, and, whether they get jobs in the community or stay in the community or move on. The taxpayers should be well served by having smarter students. So then the next question is what should a parent expect to receive from this? And I think it's important that we highlight that our supervisor of elementary curriculum, a parent should expect that over time they can understand whether it's reading, whether it's writing, whether it's arithmetic, regardless of what school they go to. We will have a base foundation for every teacher in the district to be able to teach, not necessarily the same things, but know what our foundation expectation is. And then each teacher puts their personality and the needs of their class to bear. But one of the things that we're struggling with, and I'm going to ask Cameron to go a little deeper, but we've identified that writing is something that we need to work on with our elementary kids. And we need to improve that instruction of writing. Well, it's easy to say that, and it's easy for all of us to remember a Christmas Story where you had to write a theme. It's not simple enough to just say, hey, every teacher in Strongsville needs to assign a theme. We need to have a more nuanced and a deeper understanding of what we're going to do so that when we say we need our students to write better, they will. Cameron, can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, writing has been an area of focus in the district for a handful of years, and Aaron a few years ago brought in Lucy Calkins, a writing program, put a tremendous amount of professional development. I mean, our teachers were trained, beyond trained, and then, not that you want to make a reason for the pandemic, but your focus shifts as you're going through a pandemic. And so how do we regain that momentum we have? How do we take Lucy Calkins, which is a extremely comprehensive program. You could teach Lucy Calkins all day, every day, and break it down into a way that's meaningful for not only our K to 5, but what Carol McKnight is doing at the secondary level in terms of 6 to 12 in writing. And what's exciting about our literacy coaches and our new position with Amy at the supervisor of elementary curriculum is we can give context to this. She can work with teachers and she could speak in the language teachers speak in terms of how are we going to teach writing? How are we going to have writing conferences? How are we going to measure and support and coach students? I shared this example recently. I remember maybe your experience was different than mine, but when I was in school and I would turn in a writing assignment, you'd get it back, it'd have all the red edits on it. I'd take a look at it and say, that's great. I'll put this off to the side. But what it is now, it's about it's an iterative process. I get those edits, I work, I get coached, I support. Maybe I need to bolster my details. I need to strengthen my concluding sentence. I need to have more evidence in my writing. And then it's about how do we as teachers get together and look at real work samples. Look at students and see where are we making progress, where are we making gains, not only in our grade level, but vertically from K to 5. And where can we look at gaps and where can we support that so we're all speaking the same language. The exciting part is what I just described to you. The reason I can speak about it so well is because I've seen Amy Pinney do this at her building over the last 2 years that I've had a chance to work with her. And so this is the kind of work that she's going to bring to every elementary building. Not that everybody's not doing the best that they possibly can with the skills and knowledge they have, but the ability to kind of take that, look at it, coach it in a game time situation. And so we can help improve not only the prowess of our teachers, but the writing skills of our students. Those are things we think are game changers for our district.
Thank you, Cameron. And, one of the things we talked about as far as what can a parent expect, we're going to do a lot of work. Amy and Jessica are going to do a lot of, foundational organizational work. And we want to be able to share that with parents. We think it would be a helpful thing that work that is going to go to teachers to help teachers ultimately do their job better. We can also share with parents so that parents can understand, when my student is a 3rd grader, these are the things that they're going to learn, and not just as simple as writing, but like Cameron talked about, the ability to form a sentence at whatever grade level and to do it with a little more rigor and a little more specificity. So I think that's exciting. Another thing we asked is what can teachers expect? We've done this to some degree, but we could just tell every 3rd grade teacher, this is what you need to do. And every 3rd grade teacher in the district is going to have to develop that from scratch. Well, there's a lot of duplicating of labor there. We'll be able to coordinate with Amy's work, and we'll be able to coordinate with Jessica's work, coming up with that beginning framework and then helping teachers learn how to teach that, and then ultimately be more efficient so that we're not duplicating efforts and that we can have best practices and share that amongst everyone. So I think that's a positive for the teachers. And lastly, it would be forgetful on our part to say what should a student expect? And a student over time should expect better learning experiences. They should expect to learn more. But as an example, one of the things Jessica is going to be working on is problem-based learning. It's easy to say problem-based learning. It's easy to have a problem and say, here's the solution. But teaching children how to solve problems is not as simple as saying, here's the problem, here's the solution. And that in our society right now, the way the world's going, problem-based solving problems is an important skill to have. And it's not as straightforward to pick that up. It's actually quite involved to teach that. And so I think as a board, we're all looking forward to seeing the work that Jessica is going to do on that front. But ultimately, I think this is a wise investment that's going to pay dividends. and it'll pay dividends for our students and our community. So I'm excited that we're hiring these two people. I'm excited to see what they're going to do in the next year, along with the next 5 years and beyond. Thank you.
All right, so we still have a motion. George, can you take the roll?
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Salee. Yes. Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum.
Yes. That brings us to
Motion
Board
pa-
of Education Other.
Motion passes.
Oh, motion passes. You told me to. Thank you. Board of Education Other, does anyone have anything else? All right. And we do have need for executive session for,
To consider the employment of a public employee and to review negotiations with public employees concerning compensation or other terms and conditions of employment.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Bissell.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
No. Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Salee.
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum.
Yes. All right, we will enter into executive session at 8:35. We have no expectation for additional business after executive session, so I'd like to wish everybody a good night.